Lily Carter stood at the edge of the clearing, her boots sinking slightly into the soft soil of Xetheris. The planet was unlike anything she had ever seen before. Two suns hung in the sky, casting a strange golden-orange glow over everything. The air smelled faintly of sulfur, and the ground beneath her feet was dotted with patches of moss that glowed faintly blue in the dim light. It was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. Every step they took on this alien world felt like walking. On thin ice, she adjusted the strap of her rifle across her shoulder, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. Lily wasn't here to fight, at least, not officially. She was part of a diplomatic mission led by Captain Daniel Hayes, a man who always seemed to carry the weight of the universe on his shoulders. His orders were clear: establish peace between humans and the Vorthak, one of the most powerful alien races in the galaxy. But peace wasn't easy to come by, especially when the Vorthak viewed humans as weak and insignificant. The Vorthak were towering creatures, standing nearly 8 feet tall with broad shoulders and thick, armored skin. Their eyes glowed faintly yellow, and their voices rumbled like distant thunder. They weren't just physically imposing. Their culture revolved around strength and dominance. To them, weakness was a flaw that couldn't be tolerated. That's why today's meeting was so important and so risky. Captain Hayes had gathered his team near the center of the clearing, where a makeshift table had been set up. A group of Vorthak warriors loomed nearby, their expressions unreadable. One of them stepped forward, his massive frame drawing all eyes. This was Zorvak, a warrior known for his skill in battle and his disdain for humans. He wore intricate armor covered in etched symbols, and his movements were deliberate, almost predatory. When he spoke, his voice carried across the clearing. Like a challenge. You call yourselves equals, Zorvak said. His words translated through a small device clipped to his belt. But how can we trust you? How do we know you are strong enough to stand beside us? The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Captain Hayes hesitated, glancing briefly at his team. Lily knew what he was thinking. They had prepared for moments like this, but no amount of preparation could fully account for the unpredictability of the Vorthak. Still, someone needed to respond. Someone needed to prove that humans weren't as fragile as these aliens believed, before anyone else could speak. Lily stepped forward. Her heart raced, but she kept her expression calm. She had trained for years back on Earth, mastering hand-to-hand combat and learning how to think quickly under pressure. She wasn't afraid of Zorvak or any of them, but she knew better than to underestimate him. These aliens might look like monsters, but they weren't stupid. They would test her, push her limits, and see if she broke. I'll do it, Lily said, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her chest. Captain Hayes turned to her, his brow furrowing. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly, pulling her aside. This isn't just about proving yourself. If you mess this up, it could ruin everything. I won't mess it up, Lily replied, meeting his gaze. And I'm not doing this just to prove myself. I'm doing it because we need them to take us seriously. Trust me. Hayes studied her for a moment longer before nodding reluctantly. Fine, but remember what I told you, go easy on him. Lily nodded, though she didn't fully agree. Going easy wasn't really her style. Still, she understood the stakes. This wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about diplomacy, about showing the Vorthak that humans were capable of more than they assumed. With a deep breath, she walked toward Zorvak. Her head held high, the alien warrior watched her approach, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. He tilted his head, studying her as though trying to decide whether she was worth his time. Finally? He let out a low chuckle, the sound echoing like rolling thunder. So, this is your champion? Zorvak asked, addressing Captain Hayes, a tiny human girl. Are you mocking us? No mockery, Hayes replied firmly. She's stronger than she looks, Zorvak smirked, clearly unconvinced. Very well, let us see what this child can do. The crowd began to gather around them, forming a loose circle. Humans and Vorthak alike pressed closer, eager to witness the spectacle. Some of the Vorthak muttered among themselves, their voices rumbling like distant storms. Others crossed their arms, their expressions skeptical. On the human side, there was a mix of hope and worry. A few members of the team whispered words of encouragement to Lily, while others simply looked on. Unsure of what to expect, Lily ignored the noise, focusing instead on Zorvak. He was much bigger than she had anticipated, but size wasn't everything. She had faced opponents twice her size during training, and she had always found a way to win. Whether it was speed, strategy, or sheer determination, she had something they didn't: adaptability. As the two of them squared off, Lily took a moment to assess her opponent. Zorvak moved with surprising grace for someone so large, his muscles coiled like springs beneath his armor. He carried himself with confidence, his stance wide and grounded. She noted the way his hands flexed slightly, ready to strike at a moment's notice. But there was something else too, a flicker of amusement in his eyes, as though he thought this whole thing was a joke. The rules of the sparring match were simple: no weapons, no killing blows. The goal was to incapacitate the opponent or force them to yield. A referee, a neutral third party from another alien race, stood nearby, ready to intervene if things got out of hand. Once the signal was given, the fight would begin. When the referee raised his hand, signaling the start of the match, Zorvak wasted no time. He charged forward with incredible speed, his massive fists swinging toward Lily like a battering ram. The crowd gasped, certain that the blow would send her flying or worse. But Lily ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as his fist whistled past her ear. She rolled to the side, putting some distance between them. Zorvak turned to face her, his smirk widening. "Is that all you've got?" he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. Lily didn't respond. Instead, she feinted to the left, then darted to the right, closing the gap between them faster than he expected. Before he could react, she drove her knee into his midsection, aiming for the spot where his armor ended and his flesh began. The impact made him grunt, though it clearly wasn't enough to stop him. He grabbed her arm, attempting to throw her to the ground, but she twisted free, using his own momentum to spin around behind him. The crowd roared, their cheers mixing with shouts of disbelief. No one had expected the small human girl to hold her own against a Vorthak warrior, let alone land a hit. Even Zorvak seemed surprised, though he quickly masked it with anger. He swung again, this time aiming lower, trying to sweep her legs out from under her. Lily jumped back, narrowly avoiding the attack, but she stumbled slightly as she landed, seizing the opportunity. Zorvak lunged forward, grabbing her by the shoulders and lifting her off the ground. For a moment, Lily felt a surge of panic as her feet dangled uselessly in the air. But panic wasn't an option, not here, not now. Summoning every ounce of strength she had, she brought her knees up sharply, driving them into his chest. The force of the blow caused him to stagger backward, giving her just enough room to break free. Breathing hard, Lily circled him cautiously, her mind racing. She couldn't keep dodging forever. Sooner or later, she'd make a mistake, and Zorvak wouldn't hesitate to exploit it. She needed to end this quickly, but how? Then she remembered something her instructor had once told her. Sometimes, the best way to win is to surprise your opponent. With that thought in mind, Lily launched herself at Zorvak, her movements fast and unpredictable. She aimed a series of quick jabs at his exposed areas, forcing him to raise his arms defensively. Just as he began to counterattack, she dropped low, sweeping her leg across the ground in a wide arc. Zorvak stumbled, caught off guard by the unexpected maneuver. Seizing the moment, Lily sprang upward, delivering a powerful spinning elbow strike. Straight to his ribs, there was a sharp crack, followed by a collective gasp from the crowd. Zorvak staggered, clutching his side, pain flashing across his face. For a brief moment, silence fell over the clearing, broken only by the sound of Lily's ragged breathing. Then slowly the spectators erupted into chaos, their reactions ranging from awe to outrage. Lily stepped back, lowering her guard slightly. She hadn't meant to hurt him so badly, but she also hadn't planned to hold back entirely. As she glanced toward Captain Hayes, she saw a mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The crowd was in an uproar. Some of the Vorthak roared their approval, pounding their fists against their chests as though witnessing a legendary battle. Others shouted in anger, their voices rough and guttural, accusing Lily of breaking the rules or showing disrespect. On the human side, reactions were mixed. A few members of the team cheered quietly, relief and pride washing over them as they realized Lily had held her own against Zorvek. But others looked on with worry, their faces tense as they considered what this might mean for the fragile negotiations. Lily stood in the center of it all, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Her knuckles stung from the force of her strikes, and her legs felt like jelly after dodging Zorvak's relentless attacks. She hadn't planned to crack his ribs, but she also hadn't wanted to back down. Every fiber of her being told her that showing weakness would only make things worse. Still, as she watched Zorvak clutch his side and struggle to stay upright, guilt began to creep in. She hadn't come here to humiliate anyone, she just wanted to prove that humans weren't pushovers. Zorvak straightened slowly, his glowing yellow eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, Lily thought he might charge at her again, ignoring the referee's call to stop the match. His expression was unreadable, a mix of pain and something else she couldn't quite place. Was it anger, respect, or maybe both? Whatever it was, it made her stomach twist with unease. Finally, Zorvak took a step back, raising one hand to signal that he wouldn't continue the fight. The referee stepped forward, waving his arms to quiet the crowd. "The match is over," he announced, his voice calm but firm. "Both fighters have shown skill and courage. Let us honor their efforts." The crowd gradually settled, though murmurs of discontent still rippled through the gathering. Captain Hayes approached Lily, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. He placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her away from the arena and toward the edge of the clearing where they could speak privately. "What were you thinking?" Hayes asked, his tone low but sharp. "I told you to go easy on him." "I did go easy," Lily replied, her voice defensive. "If I hadn't, he'd be flat on his back right now, or worse. You saw how fast he moved. If I hadn't kept up, I'd be the one lying there instead of him." Hayes sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "That's not the point, Lily. This isn't about proving who's stronger. It's about diplomacy, about building trust. Do you think cracking his ribs is going to help with that?" Lily crossed her arms, frustration bubbling inside her. "I didn't mean to hurt him that badly, but I wasn't going to let him crush me either. You heard what he said before the fight. He thought I was a joke. If I'd back down, none of them would take us seriously. Is that what you want?" Hayes stared at her for a long moment, his jaw tightening. Finally he shook his head. "No, that's not what I want. But we're walking a fine line here. The Vorthak are proud, and they don't forgive easily. If they decide this was an insult, it could ruin everything we've worked for." Before Lily could respond, a deep rumble cut through the air. Both of them turned to see Zorvak approaching, his massive frame casting a long shadow in the fading light of the twin suns. He stopped a few feet away, his glowing eyes fixed on Lily. For a moment no one spoke. The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. "You fight well," Zorvak said finally, his voice quieter than before. There was no mockery in his tone now, only a grudging acknowledgement. "Better than any human I have seen." Lily blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected compliment. "Thank you," she said cautiously. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to show you that we're not weak." Zorvak tilted his head, studying her as though trying to understand her motives. "You are small, but you are strong," he said after a pause. "Stronger than I expected. Perhaps stronger than I gave you credit for." Captain Hayes cleared his throat, stepping forward to address Zorvak. "We came here in peace," he said firmly. "This match was meant to build trust, not create more conflict. If there's been any offense, it was unintentional." Zorvak waved a hand dismissively. "There is no offense," he rumbled. "A challenge was issued, and it was met. That is how we settle disputes among my people. Strength earns respect. Weakness invites contempt." Hayes nodded slowly, though his expression remained wary. "Then let's focus on moving forward. We have much to discuss if we're going to work together." Zorvak's gaze lingered on Lily for a moment longer, before he turned and walked away, his armored boots crunching against the mossy ground. As he rejoined his fellow warriors, they began to disperse, their earlier outrage fading into muttered conversations. The humans followed suit, retreating to their camp to regroup and assess the situation. Back at the encampment, the mood was tense. Some members of the team praised Lily for standing her ground, while others expressed concern about the fallout from the fight. Captain Hayes called a meeting to address the issue, gathering everyone in the center of the camp beneath the glow of portable lanterns. "We need to be careful," Hayes began, pacing back and forth as he addressed the group. "What happened today may have consequences we can't predict. The Vorthak value strength, but they also value honor. If they feel disrespected, they won't hesitate to turn on us." One of the team members, a man named Ryan, raised his hand. "Do you think they'll walk away from the negotiations?" "It's possible," Hayes admitted. "But we can't control how they react. What we can do is stay calm and focused. We came here to form an alliance, and that's still our goal. We just need to tread carefully." Lily sat quietly, listening to the discussion but feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She knew they were right to worry. This mission was too important to risk over a single fight, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd done the right thing. If she'd backed down, the Vorthak would have dismissed them as cowards. At least now they had a chance to prove themselves. Later that night, as the camp settled into an uneasy silence, Lily found herself unable to sleep. She sat outside her tent, staring up at the strange stars scattered across the alien sky. The two suns had set hours ago, leaving the world bathed in darkness, broken only by the faint glow of bioluminescent plants. It was peaceful, but her mind was anything but calm. She replayed the fight in her head, analyzing every move, every decision. Had she gone too far? Could she have ended it sooner without causing so much damage? And what would happen next? Would the Vorthak hold a grudge, or would they see her actions as a sign of strength? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Captain Hayes approaching, a steaming cup of coffee in his hand. He handed it to her with a small smile. "Couldn't sleep either?" Lily accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "Too much on my mind," she admitted. "I keep thinking about what happened today, wondering if I messed everything up." Hayes sat down beside her, leaning back on his elbows as he gazed up at the stars. "You didn't mess anything up?" he said after a moment. "Not completely. Anyway, you showed them that we're capable of standing our ground. That's not a bad thing, it's just complicated." "Complicated how?" Lily asked, sipping the coffee cautiously. "Because the Vorthak aren't like us," Hayes explained. "Their culture is built on dominance and hierarchy. To them, strength isn't just a trait, it's a way of life. By beating Zorvak even, partially you challenge their worldview. Some of them will respect you for it, others might not." Lily frowned, processing his words. "So what do we do now?" "We wait," Hayes said simply. "And we adapt. Tomorrow we'll see how they respond. If they're willing to keep talking, then we'll find a way to move forward. If not—" He trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. They sat in silence for a while, the cool night air wrapping around them like a blanket. Despite the uncertainty looming over the mission, Lily felt a flicker of determination ignite within her. She hadn't come this far to give up now. Whatever happened next, she would face it head-on just like she always did. The next morning, the atmosphere in the human encampment was heavy with anticipation. No one knew how the Vorthak would react to what had happened the day before. Would they demand justice for Zorvak's injury? Or would they see it as a sign of strength and move forward with the negotiations? The uncertainty hung over everyone like a storm cloud, making even simple tasks feel tense and exhausting. Lily woke early, her body still sore from the fight. She stretched carefully, trying to work out the stiffness in her muscles. Her mind raced with thoughts of what might happen today. She replayed Captain Hayes' words from the night before, *, we wait, and we adapt. It was easier said than done, but Lily knew he was right. They couldn't control the Vorthak's reaction, they could only respond when the time came. As she stepped outside her tent, She noticed that the bioluminescent plants around the camp seemed dimmer than usual. Maybe it was just her imagination, or maybe the tension in the air was affecting everything, even the glowing moss. Either way, it felt fitting. Captain Hayes was already up, pacing near the edge of the camp. He glanced at Lily as she approached, his expression unreadable. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with concern. "I'm fine," Lily replied, though she wasn't entirely sure if it was true. Physically, she was okay, just a few bruises and sore spots. Mentally, however, she felt like she was balancing on a tightrope. One wrong step, and everything could come crashing down. Hayes nodded, then gestured toward the horizon. "They're coming." Lily turned to see a group of Vorthic warriors approaching from the distance. Their armored forms were unmistakable against the pale light of the rising suns. At their center was Zorvash, his massive frame towering over the others. His movements were slower than usual, likely due to his injured ribs, but he carried himself with the same confidence as always. Behind him walked Kral, Zorvak's second in command, a slightly shorter but equally imposing figure with sharp features and piercing yellow eyes. The humans gathered together, forming a loose line near the edge of the camp. Captain Hayes stepped forward to meet the Vorthek, his posture relaxed but alert. Lily stayed close behind him, ready to step in if needed. The two groups stopped a few feet apart, the silence between them thick and charged. Kral spoke first, his deep voice carrying across the clearing. "We have discussed what happened yesterday," he began, his tone neutral. "Zorvak has shared his thoughts, and our leaders have reached a decision." Everyone held their breath, waiting for what came next. Captain Hayes nodded, encouraging Kral to continue. "The fight was unexpected," Kral admitted, glancing briefly at Lily. "But it was also revealing. Your warrior showed skill and determination. These are qualities we respect." A murmur rippled through the human team, a mix of relief and surprise. Lily felt her chest loosened slightly, though she remained cautious. "This wasn't over yet," Kral continued. "However, there is still much distrust between our peoples. To address this, we propose a series of challenges, not battles, but demonstrations of strength and skill. Each side will choose representatives to compete in these trials. The goal is not to harm, but to learn from each other." Captain Hayes frowned, considering the proposal. "What kind of challenges are we talking about?" "Physical contests," Kral replied. "Tests of endurance, agility, and strategy, nothing lethal. Our aim is to build understanding, not escalate conflict." The captain exchanged a glance with Lily, then turned back to Kral. "And if we agree to this, what happens afterward?" "If both sides perform honorably, we will consider continuing negotiations," Kral said. "This is your chance to prove yourselves not just as warriors, but as allies." Hayes nodded slowly. "We accept your terms." The Vorthak warriors murmured among themselves, clearly pleased with the response. Kral gave a slight bow of acknowledgement before turning to leave. As the group began to walk away, Zorvak paused. Looking directly at Lily for a moment, their eyes met. And Lily saw something in his gaze, admiration, perhaps, or maybe curiosity. Then he turned and followed the others, disappearing into the distance. Later that day, the human team gathered to discuss strategy. Captain Hayes stood at the center of the group, addressing everyone with quiet authority. "This is an opportunity," he said. "If we handle this right, we can turn things around. But we need to be smart about it." "What exactly are these challenges going to involve?" Ryan asked, scratching his head. "Are we talking sparring matches again? Or something else entirely?" "We won't know until they tell us," Hayes admitted. "But whatever it is, we'll need to prepare. That means training, and not just physically. We need to understand how the Vorthik think, how they approach problems. If we can anticipate their moves, we'll have the upper hand." All eyes turned to Lily. She shifted uncomfortably under their stares, knowing what was coming next. "Sure enough," Hayes spoke up. "Lily, you'll be representing us again. You've already proven yourself once, you can do it again." She hesitated, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. "I'll do my best," she said finally. "But I don't want to go into this blind." I need to know more about what I'm up against. Hayes nodded. Agreed. Which is why we're going to start practicing immediately. And he paused, glancing toward the horizon. I think we should ask Zorvak for help. The suggestion drew gasps of disbelief from the group. You want us to train with the guy Lily nearly broke in half? Ryan exclaimed. Are you serious? It's not about trust, Hayes explained. It's about learning. If we're going to face the Vorthak in these challenges, we need to understand their techniques. Who better to teach us than one of their best warriors? Lily didn't argue. As much as the idea made her nervous, she knew Hayes was right. If they wanted to succeed, they couldn't rely on guesswork. They needed insight, and Zorvak was the key. The next morning, Zorvak arrived at the human camp, accompanied by Kral. Both aliens wore lighter armor than usual, suggesting they were here for training rather than combat. Zorvak's presence alone was enough to make some of the humans uneasy, but Lily forced herself to stay calm. She stepped forward to greet him, her expression neutral. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice steady. We're ready to learn. Zorvak studied her for a moment, then nodded. You are strong, he rumbled, but strength alone is not enough. Let us see if you can adapt. Over the next several days, Lily trained alongside Zorvak, learning the intricacies of Vorthak fighting styles. Their techniques were brutal and efficient, relying on raw power and calculated precision. At first, Lily struggled to keep up. Zorvak's size and speed made him a formidable opponent, and his attacks often left her scrambling to defend herself. But as the days passed, she began to pick up on patterns in his movements. She learned to anticipate his strikes and counter them with quick, agile maneuvers. In return, Lily taught Zorvak some of her own methods. She showed him how to use an opponent's momentum against them, turning their strength into a weakness. She demonstrated techniques for conserving energy during prolonged fights, emphasizing efficiency over brute force. To her surprise, Zorvak proved to be a willing student. Absorbing her lessons with surprising focus, their initial animosity gradually gave way to mutual respect. Though they rarely spoke outside of training, their interactions became less hostile and more cooperative. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Zorvak approached Lily as she sat resting against a tree. You fight differently than my people, he said, his voice low. Your methods are clever. Lily looked up at him, surprised by the compliment. Thanks, she replied cautiously. I guess I've always had to rely on being smarter, not stronger. Zorvak tilted his head, studying her. Strength and intelligence are not opposites, he said thoughtfully. Perhaps they are two sides of the same coin. Lily smiled faintly, unsure how to respond. Zorvak's words lingered in her mind. Long after he walked away, leaving her to ponder their meaning, as the day of the challenges approached, the human team grew more confident. Their training with Zorvak had paid off, giving them valuable insights into Vorthak tactics. They practiced tirelessly, refining their skills and strategizing for every possible scenario. Still, nerves ran high. No matter how prepared they were, there was no guarantee of success. On the eve of the event, Captain Hayes called everyone together for a final briefing. Tomorrow is our chance to show the Vorthak who we really are, he said, his voice firm but reassuring. We've trained hard, and we've learned a lot. Now it's time to put it all into action. Remember, this isn't just about winning, it's about proving that we can stand beside them as equals. Lily listened quietly, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew the stakes were higher than ever. If they succeeded, they might finally earn the Vorthak's trust. If they failed? Well, she didn't want to think about that. As the meeting ended, Lily found herself standing alone beneath the twin moons of Zethyrus. The glowing moss cast soft shadows across the ground, and the distant hum of alien wildlife filled the air. She took a deep breath, letting the cool night breeze wash over her. Whatever happened tomorrow, she was ready. The day of the challenges dawned bright and clear, with the twin suns casting long shadows across the clearing where the event would take place. The air buzzed with anticipation as both humans and Vorthak gathered to witness the trials. Spectators filled the edges of the arena, their murmurs creating a low hum that seemed to echo through the strange landscape of Zethyrus. For Lily, the morning felt surreal. She had spent so much time preparing for this moment, but now that it was here, everything seemed larger than life. Captain Hayes stood beside her, his expression calm but focused. "Remember what we talked about?" he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the growing noise. "Stay sharp, stay adaptable, and don't let your guard down." Lily nodded, gripping her hands into fists to steady herself. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to breathe deeply, drawing strength from the rhythm of her breaths. She glanced toward Zorvak, who stood among his fellow warriors. His glowing yellow eyes met hers briefly, and though his face remained unreadable, there was a flicker of something respect, perhaps, in his gaze. It gave her a small measure of reassurance. Kral stepped forward, raising a hand to quiet the crowd. His deep voice carried easily across the clearing. "Today we honor strength and skill," he announced. "These challenges are not battles, but demonstrations of what makes us who we are. Let them serve as a bridge between our peoples, not a wall." A murmur of approval rippled through the audience, and Kral gestured for the first challenge to begin. A large circle had been marked out in the center of the clearing, its boundaries defined by glowing stones that pulsed faintly with energy. Inside the circle stood two figures, Lily and Zorvak. This time, however, the rules were different. Instead of fighting each other, they would perform a choreographed display of combat, blending human and Vorthak techniques into a single performance. As Lily and Zorvak entered the circle, the crowd fell silent. All eyes were on them, watching every movement with rapt attention. Zorvak moved first, striking a powerful pose that showcased his size and strength. Lily mirrored him, adopting a stance that emphasized agility and precision. Then, without warning, they began. Their movements were fluid and synchronized, each step flowing seamlessly into the next. Zorvak's strikes were heavy and deliberate, designed to demonstrate raw power. But instead of dodging or blocking, Lily redirected his momentum, using his force against him. When she countered, her attacks were quick and precise, highlighting speed and strategy. Together, they created a dance of contrasts: strength versus agility, brute force versus clever tactics. At one point, Zorvak swept his arm in a wide arc, aiming for Lily's shoulder. She ducked beneath the blow, spinning around to deliver a swift kick to his side. To the audience, it looked like a perfectly timed exchange, each move complementing the other. Even Zorvak seemed impressed, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. As he adjusted his footing to match her pace, the crowd erupted into cheers, their voices rising in unison. Some of the Vorthag pounded their fists against their chests, while others shouted words of encouragement. On the human side, the team clapped and whistled, their faces lit with pride. For the first time since arriving on Zethyrus, there was a sense of unity in the air, a shared appreciation for the skill and effort being displayed. When the demonstration ended, Lily and Zorvak stepped back, bowing slightly to acknowledge the applause. Their breathing was heavy, but neither showed any sign of fatigue. As they left the circle, Captain Hayes approached Lily, his face split into a wide grin. "That was incredible," he said, clapping her on the back. "You did exactly what we needed you to do." Lily smiled faintly, still catching her breath. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "Zorvak made it work too." Hayes nodded, glancing toward the Vorthak warrior. "He's starting to see us differently." "That's progress." The second challenge was a test of endurance. Both sides sent representatives to compete in a grueling race across the rocky terrain surrounding the clearing. The course was littered with obstacles, steep inclines, narrow ledges, and patches of slippery moss, and required not only physical stamina but also mental focus. Ryan volunteered to represent the humans, his competitive spirit shining through as he lined up at the starting point. Beside him stood Kral, who regarded the human with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. When the signal was given, both competitors took off at a sprint, their boots kicking up dust as they surged forward. Ryan quickly realized that brute speed wouldn't be enough to win. The Vorthak were built for endurance, their massive frames allowing them to cover great distances without tiring. Instead of trying to outrun Krall, Ryan relied on his knowledge of the terrain, taking shortcuts and navigating the obstacles with care. At one point he scrambled up a jagged rock face, his fingers finding purchase in cracks too small for Krall to use. By the time they reached the halfway mark, Ryan was several steps ahead, but Krall wasn't about to give up. With a burst of speed, he closed the gap, his powerful strides eating up the distance. As they neared the finish line, the two competitors were neck and neck, their determination driving them forward. In the end, it was Ryan who crossed first, collapsing onto the ground as cheers erupted from the human side. Krall stopped a few feet behind him, nodding in acknowledgement of the human's victory. "You ran well," Krall said, extending a hand to help Ryan to his feet. "I underestimated you." Ryan accepted the gesture, shaking Krall's hand firmly. "Thanks, you're not bad yourself." The final challenge was a test of strategy. Each side was tasked with solving a complex puzzle involving a series of interlocking mechanisms. The goal was simple: unlock the central device before the other team. But achieving it required teamwork, communication, and quick thinking. Lily worked alongside her teammates, studying the puzzle intently. The Vorthak, meanwhile, relied on their natural instincts, breaking the problem down into smaller parts and tackling each one individually. At first it seemed like the humans had the upper hand. Their ability to coordinate and adapt gave them an edge. But the Vorthak's sheer persistence began to pay off, and soon the two teams were evenly matched. In the end, neither side won outright. Both groups managed to unlock the device at nearly the same time, their efforts culminating in a tie. The crowd roared its approval, celebrating the shared success. For the first time, the humans and Vorthak stood side by side, united by a common goal. As the suns dipped below the horizon, casting the clearing in a warm orange glow, Krall addressed the assembled crowd. "Today we have seen strength, endurance, and intelligence," he declared. "We have learned from each other, and in doing so, we have taken the first step toward understanding. Let this be the foundation of a new alliance." The announcement was met with thunderous applause, the sound echoing across the alien landscape. Captain Hayes stepped forward, his expression solemn but hopeful. "We came here seeking peace," he said. "And today I believe we found it not through words alone, but through action. Let us continue to build on this trust for the sake of both our peoples." Lily watched as the humans and Vorthak mingled, exchanging nods and gestures of respect. She felt a surge of pride, knowing that her actions had played a part in bridging the gap between two vastly different worlds. It wasn't perfect, there was still much work to be done, but it was a start. Later that night, as the celebrations wound down, Zorvak approached Lily. He held out a small object carved from Zetherian stone, its surface etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the dim light. "This is for you," he said simply, a token of respect. Lily accepted the gift, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. "Thank you," she replied, meeting his gaze. "I didn't expect this." Zorvak tilted his head, his glowing eyes softening slightly. "You are strong," he said. "Do not forget it." With that he turned and walked away, leaving Lily to ponder his words. As she stared at the carving in her hand, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she could face them not alone, but as part of something greater. The days following the challenges passed quickly, filled with meetings and discussions between the humans and the Vorthak. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. What had once been tense and distrustful now felt cautiously optimistic. Both sides were working together, sharing ideas and strategies for addressing the looming threat that had brought them to Zethyrus in the first place. A mysterious fleet approaching the planet, Lily found herself spending more time with Zorvak and Krall than she ever would have imagined. At first, their interactions were formal and guarded, but as they worked side by side, a fragile bond began to form. They weren't friends exactly, but there was mutual respect, a quiet understanding that they shared a common goal. Zorvak, in particular, seemed intrigued by Lily's resilience. He often watched her during discussions, his glowing eyes thoughtful, as though trying to piece together what made her tick. One evening, after a long day of planning, Lily sat outside the human encampment, staring up at the twin moons of Xaetheris. The glowing moss around her cast soft shadows on the ground, and the distant hum of alien wildlife filled the air. She was exhausted, both physically and mentally, but she couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts swirled in her mind, thoughts about the mission, about the Vorthak, and about what came next. Zorvak appeared without warning, his massive frame silhouetted against the pale light of the moons. He stopped a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "You are troubled," he said, his deep voice cutting through the silence. Lily glanced up at him, surprised by his presence. "Not really," she replied, though her tone betrayed her unease. "Just thinking about the fleet?" Zorvak asked, lowering himself onto a nearby rock. His movements were slow and deliberate, careful not to startle her. "Yeah," Lily admitted. "It's hard not to think about it. We've come so far, but if we can't stop that fleet, none of this will matter." Zorvak nodded, his glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. "War changes everything," he said after a moment. "It tests strength, loyalty, and resolve, but it also reveals truth. You humans, you are stronger than we believed." Lily looked at him, startled by the sincerity in his voice. "Thanks," she said softly. "That means a lot coming from you." Zorvak tilted his head, studying her. "Do not mistake my words for kindness," he rumbled. "I speak only what I see. Your people may be small, but your hearts are large. That is a rare quality." Lily smiled faintly, unsure how to respond. It wasn't often that Zorvak offered praise, and hearing it now left her feeling oddly vulnerable. She turned her gaze back to the sky, letting the silence stretch between them. For a while, neither of them spoke, content to sit beneath the moons and share the quiet. The next morning, Captain Hayes called the team together for an update. "We've received new intel about the fleet," he announced, his tone grave. "They're moving faster than we anticipated. If we don't act soon, they'll reach Xaetheris within weeks." A wave of tension swept through the group. Everyone knew what was at stake. The fleet belonged to a hostile alien race known as the Drakther, who sought to conquer and destroy anything in their path. If they reached Xaetheris, it wouldn't just mean disaster for the Vorthak, it would mean disaster for humanity too. "We need to finalize our strategy," Hayes continued. "The Vorthak have agreed to combine forces with us, but we'll need to coordinate every detail. This isn't just about defense, it's about survival." Lily listened intently, her mind racing. She had faced danger before, but nothing on this scale. The thought of going up against an entire fleet was overwhelming, but she pushed the fear aside. Now wasn't the time to hesitate. Later that day, the humans and Vorthak gathered in a large tent near the center of the clearing. Maps and diagrams covered the tables, detailing the layout of the planet and potential defensive positions. Krall stood beside Captain Hayes, pointing out key areas where they could set traps or ambush the enemy. Zorvak hovered nearby, occasionally offering input with a low rumble of agreement. Lily focused on the details, jotting down notes and asking questions when something wasn't clear. She noticed how the Vorthak approached the problem differently than the humans. Where the humans relied on technology and precision, the Vorthak favored brute force and adaptability. By combining their strengths, they created a plan that balanced innovation with raw power. As the meeting drew to a close, Captain Hayes addressed the group. "This won't be easy," he said, his voice firm but reassuring. "But if we stick together, we can make it work. Remember why we're here, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who depends on us." The room erupted into murmurs of agreement, and Lily felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Despite the odds, they had a chance, and that was enough. In the days that followed, preparations intensified. The humans and Vorthak worked tirelessly, fortifying defenses and stockpiling resources. Lily spent most of her time training with Zorvak, honing their combat techniques and testing new strategies. Their partnership had evolved into something deeper, a shared commitment to protecting their people. One afternoon, as they sparred in the clearing, Zorvak paused mid-movement, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "You are different from other humans," he said, his tone contemplative. "Why?" Lily lowered her guard, catching her breath. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You fight not just for yourself, but for others," Zorvak replied. "Many warriors care only for glory or revenge. But you fight for those who cannot." Lily hesitated, unsure how to explain. "I guess I've always believed that strength isn't just about winning," she said finally. "It's about using your power to help others. If I can protect even one person, it's worth it." Zorvak studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "A worthy philosophy," he said. "Perhaps that is why we have come to respect you." The compliment caught Lily off guard, and she smiled despite herself. "Thanks," she said quietly. "I respect you too, you know. You've taught me a lot." Zorvak didn't respond, but the faintest hint of a smile touched his lips, a rare and fleeting expression that spoke volumes. When the day of the fleet's arrival finally came, the humans and Vorthik stood side by side, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The sky darkened as the massive ships descended, their metallic hulls glinting ominously in the dim light. The air vibrated with tension, and the sound of engines roared like thunder. Lily tightened her grip on her weapon, her heart pounding in her chest. Beside her, Zorvak stood tall, his armored frame radiating confidence. "Stay close," he rumbled, his voice steady. "We fight as one," Lily nodded, drawing strength from his presence. Together they charged into battle, their movements synchronized as they unleashed a barrage of attacks on the enemy forces. Explosions lit up the sky and the ground shook beneath their feet, but neither side faltered. Humans and Vorthik fought shoulder to shoulder, their combined efforts turning the tide of the battle, hours later, as the dust settled and the last of the Drakther ships retreated into the void. Lily collapsed onto the ground, her body trembling with exhaustion. Around her, cheers erupted from both humans and Vorthak, their voices blending into a single chorus of triumph. Captain Hayes approached, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse but triumphant. "Against all odds, we did it." Lily smiled weakly, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "Yeah," she whispered, "we did." Zorvak knelt beside her, his glowing eyes softening slightly. "You fought well," he said simply. "Your strength has earned its place among the stars." Lily met his gaze, gratitude swelling in her chest. "So did yours," she replied. "Thank you for everything." As the suns rose over Xaetherus once more, casting the battlefield in golden light, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead would still be difficult, but for the first time, she truly believed that peace was possible, not just between humans and Vorthok, but across the galaxy. And she knew, no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with courage and determination.